Well, hey everyone, we are here with Pat from Maine as we continue our viewer question and answer series where a viewer from every state is going to ask me 3 questions. I don't know that parts of the country have changed what these questions, I think it's been more driven by like what people do for work and their personal just paths that they're on in life or seasons. So I'm excited to hear what Pat has to ask me. Pat and I have been emailing. I mean, you've been since the beginning of my, I guess, social media presence. We have corresponded. So it's very surreal to get to like see you.
It is.
Amazing. So what is your first question?
My first question is that when the deceased arrive for you to care for, do they come with medication lists? So they know what to use different fluids for what type of things might be in the body as far as chemicals? And if I turn like green, can you fix it?
So no, they usually, sometimes if somebody comes from a nursing home, we may get a face sheet. It's called, and that tells us that was kind of like their intake sheet. So when they came into the nursing home, whenever that was, it would tell us all about, their medical history. But often we may not see that in the preparation room before we do embalming and such. So there's not enough study, not enough research on, the components of medication and how they would react to different chemicals, because a lot of it also has to do with the chemistry of the body, and every person's body chemistry is so different. So we just have to kind of go in and do our best with what we visually can see with the person and how they're responding. But like with a lot of things that a person can ingest or even be around, I mean, your environmental chemicals affect your body as well. So it might be that, oh, they look great, they're firming up, everything appears good. We come back a few hours later and the person is loosey, we say loosey-goosey, again, and they don't look like we've embalmed at all. And it's because there's been a neutralization of sorts that has happened. A lot of people have said they find this with people who are overdosing and using, a lot of different drugs that are out there in terms of, illegal drugs that we have no idea what is mixed in and such. So all we can do is do our best with how the body reacts to what we're doing. So even if we had a medication list and had this preconceived notion, the body may not be on board with our plan. But if you turn green, usually that's going to be a response to if the person was jaundice and they respond and to the chemicals and stuff, they can turn green. And we can't really get rid of the green. It's a cosmetics thing at that point. A lot of times jaundice is just a cosmetics thing because the skin is too stained for us to really alter. But if we go, the pinker we go, the better. So we may just use a lot of dye to give a base to that skin tone and then build cosmetics on. So sometimes that's really our only available in terms of the color is preserving and then cosmetizing later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. My other question is, you cared for your niece and your grandparents. Have you thought about your really close immediate family? Would you be able to care for like your husband or your parents, or God forbid your children?
Right.
And separate the embalmer Kari versus family grieving Kari.
I have thought, in passing thought about that. It's one of those, like, I think until it's maybe presented in its reality, it's really hard to know how you could even conceivably do or be involved in that kind of a situation. I think it would be on autopilot and I would have to decide in the moment.
How do you say that?
Pardon?
How do you separate that, even for the people that you know?
It really is an autopilot response that a part of you almost, I say a switch flips. When I went into care for my grandparents, I just stood there and had a moment and kind of just, it was like I went through this loss really fast, and then the switch. It's really weird, and I don't know how to explain it. I don't know if every funeral director goes through it. It's like I have to just take in the loss really quickly and take a deep breath. I don't even remember if I cried in that moment, and just had a minute with them and kind of took in what was, that they were gone, and then went into embalmer mode, and I did my job. Mm-hmm. When I was done, I was done. But then I still had to make sure everything was good for the funeral. So then I was kind of funeral director Kari. And once the funeral's over, it's kind of this, what just happened? And so I'm going to be doing a video. I don't know if it'll be before or after this video actually airs, but with a therapist whose specialty is PTSD, and how funeral directors and, last responders, I guess, or whatever, can deal with all that we take in. And part of that component is caring for people we know, and how to do what we need to do mentally in a good way, but also do our work, because it's such a crossed, faded line that I don't know that you can do cleanly both. And so I think that grief lingers, and it kind of sneaks out once in a while for a lot longer than maybe other people, because we repress and turn so much off. I think probably more about my niece dying and different components during it than probably people maybe normally would, in different ways. But I think about caring for her. Like, I remember the walk down the steps to go down to the embalming room, and I think about that a lot. I've thought about going and doing a video, walking down those steps and just kind of going through my steps along the way. Just maybe, like, if I go through the motions, maybe it'll push that into a place of trust, because to me, a lot of that is still so present. And I don't know why. And I don't know if that's normal for people. But so, I don't know, thinking about like caring for my husband or my kids or my parents, I don't feel like I want anybody else to do it, but I don't know that I could really do any of that.
Yeah.
I feel like I thankfully have people that I know I could entrust to those things if I needed to. But I also know, like, I'm never leaving the funeral home if they're there. Like, if my kids were there, I'm going to be like just sleeping there and doing it. I don't know how parents do any of those motions. They have to be literally on autopilot, and I don't know how that happens at all. That's why I feel like our role is so important during those days, because they need to be moved to where they need to, what they need to do and where they need to be. And so I feel like that our role during those days is so important in that aspect. But
very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah. What is number 3?
Number 3. Do you find a difference in the way that you're treated now than from the beginning of your career as a woman? When you first started, like years ago, did you get different attitudes from like men, not thinking you're supposed to be there because you're a woman?
I know some women are really sensitive to, I think, responsive. And I don't know if I think some people look for those responses to maybe counteract. I don't look for them as much. I just am kind of me. And I feel like I feel like with any inequality that people feel, if you look for it, you can find a sense of it. But I don't see myself as a white woman in the funeral business. I'm just Kari, the funeral director, Kari, the mortician. Like, I don't view myself different than other people. So I maybe don't see other things as much because I don't go in with that mentality. And I think that makes a huge difference with your presence. I mean, definitely I have hundreds of times, oh, you must be, the funeral director's wife, or, oh, you must be the secretary. But for how many years was that traditionally the role of the woman? especially when you get anybody 70 and older asking that question. There's people who get so insulted by that, but I see that that's just a generation that was the norm. And I love that they can be shown like, hey, things have changed. Nope, I'm, gosh, guess what? I'm the funeral director. Isn't that cool? And can educate them rather than shame them because they didn't know. They didn't just know. So I see that as a double side too, that some people just want to be abrasive and of a response rather than be excited to educate and to show somebody something new that's happening out in the world, especially in little towns. You've maybe only had one funeral director that was a male that for the whole time. So it's kind of cool that you get to bring in a female funeral director. And it's not that people are opposed. It's just that it might be new or different. Same with maybe it's always been a female teacher and then you get a male teacher. Oh, are you the gym teacher? No, I'm not. I'm the, teacher or something. And I think there's definitely that type of a situation. Like if you're a male teacher, I would guess that they get asked if they're the gym teacher probably often. It's a big guess, but I would guess that. And that one just popped in my head. But, I'm trying to think. I think I probably get asked, do I need help on removals more than often? But guess what? I'm happy to have help. I don't need to break my back. I don't need to be proud in that moment. I will take help and I will allow people to assist me because I'm in it for the long haul, not to hurt myself at an early age. So I think it's just, I don't know, pride, ego sometimes that gets in the way of some of that, trying to prove yourself. I just do me and I do me my best that I can do and try and be the best funeral director I can be as a person, not just as Kari the white woman, thing. I don't know. I just, it's a weird position, but yeah.
I know back home that we have like two within the two towns, one in each town, and they're like 80 years old. And these starched shirts and looking down their nose at you, and it's just a woman. It's just like a whole new idea. When I saw you, it's like, oh wow!
Yeah.
And you take the scary out of the whole thing.
Yeah, there is such a cliche vision, I think, of what funeral director may look like: black suit, black tie, white shirt, hands, clasped together or behind your back, stand in the corner quietly,
scary,
personality, very pale, or, just, this very stereotypical what you see in a movie or in a TV show, or, and it is fun to break that stereotype. I know so many women funeral directors, like so many. I know funeral homes that are primarily women funeral directors at them. I know people who only want to hire women. So there's going to be the people who don't want females. Maybe they're not comfortable with it. Maybe it's just not who they work well with. Maybe they had a horrible ex-wife and they just don't want to be around women again ever. Who knows what the situation is? It's not for me to figure out or judge. I don't want to work with somebody who doesn't want me working for whatever reason. I want to work with people who want me there and want me in their, employment. And so you got to find where you're comfortable and where you're wanted and needed and accepted. And it's not going to be everywhere, just like for some men. So yeah, always different. Cool. Do you have any bonus questions that you have written down at all?
Written down. Because I'm trying to pick the ones I haven't heard asked before. I have a baclofen pump, a medicine pump in my spine for my MS. And when I go for the cremation, I have to remove the battery because of the retort. But do they take the whole pump and the kit and the silicone catheter with it, or they just take the battery out?
We would have to check. Some of the manufacturers have information out about them. Sometimes they're small enough we don't have to remove things. Sometimes we do. It just really depends on the device itself. If it's easily removable, like the external, and we have to pull out all the leads and everything, then we can, if we know it's there. Sometimes things on the back, we may not even see that they're there if we're not told by the family, because they're on the back. And if we move somebody over, we may never see their back actually. And so a lot of these back things that are implanted or implemented in, the medical field are becoming tricky for us. Somebody said something about a pacemaker they're going to implant in your butt, like your buttocks. And I was like, wait, what? How is this a thing? Because that's going to be tricky for us to get that out. And I don't know why you would ever do that, but just talk on the street. It's just weird. So, there's different things. It will all depend on the brand and what it is. If we can easily take out the battery, which is kind of the bad component of it for information, we can just do that.
But the silicone catheter that's in it, does that break down in the heat, or is it going to make a mess?
It'll melt down. We may not even notice it's there. If we can easily pull it out, we will. If it just depends on what it is. We may not know it's silicone. We may not know what it is in there. It depends on the crematory too. The crematories may require certain things be removed, but it kind of comes to the point, like, how much do we have to do to remove this from the individual? Well, because the pacemaker, we just make an incision around it. And then, sometimes we have to cut the tissue off of it because it's so ingrained in the person. And sometimes they've been newly put in and the tissue has not formed to it yet, and then pull the leads out or the wires out. And sometimes it takes a little more work. And so the less we can do, the better to cut into people, just to remove medical things for cremation. But over time, there may become more things that don't, mix with cremation very well as well. Yeah. Do you have one more question?
I do. Okay. You were very open with your little ones about the industry. Now, I know that you very much approve of bringing the children to the viewing and it's kind of explaining what it is, and then they're okay with that. Do you see that over as your girls get bigger, their questions kind of change as to what mom does at work, or are they just kind of that's what she does and just continue on?
They understand. My 7-year-old now, she was at school and logged into her tablet. And on her tablet, I was logged in with my, I don't know if it was my Gmail or something was in, and it pulled up Kari the Mortician. So that word now, some people recognize it. And I said, and she said, Mom, you were logged in on my tablet, blah, blah, blah. And it pulled up at school and I can't believe it. And I said, what about that bothers you? And she said, I was a little embarrassed because people might know what that means. And I said, why does that embarrass you? Because she does talk so proudly about the work I do. And she'll tell anybody what I do. But it was funny that amongst her peers, she recognized that it might be a little different. And so that was interesting because that was the first time she's ever, usually it's cool that mom's on YouTube and that, that's a really cool thing when you can be on YouTube. And so I don't know, I think something clicked with her maybe, and maybe the teacher reacted to it. I'm not sure. But it kind of was like, aw, bad. But then the next day she told somebody, who was she telling? It was a neighbor. Somebody came over and she was like, yeah, my mom's a funeral director and she takes care of dead people when they die. And takes care, and like her explaining my job, I wish I could have videotaped it because it was so just pure and it's what just came out of her mouth. And, she's proud of that. And she wears, one of the viewers sent the girls shirts that say Future Mortician, wearing them, and they think that's great. So I think as time evolves, they'll learn more. They don't know how my niece died. They just know that she was here and she's died, and we'll talk about it when they're older. So as they get older and understand different ways that people die, they'll have more questions. Because right now, it's usually been not suicide. It's usually been cancer or old age. Like
Mm-hmm.
everybody that we've gone to funerals, it's usually been one of those two things. So
Mm-hmm.
we haven't lost, knock on wood, thankfully, anybody from a car accident or suicide or something like that where we've gone to a visitation or a funeral.
Mm-hmm.
So we haven't had to talk through some of that. So those will be much bigger conversations to have as time goes on, as types of death and things, because
It's important to be honest with them, open and honest.
right. And, you know, by golly, if we have a funeral when they're older and the casket's open and stuff for somebody who dies of a drunk driving or a texting or something, we will go visit that person because I want them to understand some of the magnitude of those things. And thanks to I'm in a position I can show them a little bit more than, I mean, you can't, as a normal mom, just stop down at the funeral home to
No.
hey, we're here for the visitation and we don't know the person, but I want my kid to understand that this can happen. And, but they understand that death can happen at any time, is they know that their 7-year-old cousin died. And so they just don't understand why or how horrible humans can be sometimes. But they will, as they grow, unfortunately, learn some of that. So
Well, thank you for your time. This has been wonderful.
well, thank you. It's so surreal getting to finally see you and meet you and know for sure what that face looks like that I always envision. I picture redder hair for some reason.
When I'm in the sun, it's a little lighter than it when we're outside in the sun. So kind of.
Yeah, that's what I picture. Well, thank you so much, Pat. So thanks, guys, for joining us for our next video here. And check us out next Sunday and find out what state we'll be getting questions from next week. Bye, guys.
Bye.